we've seen individuals who take that hierarchical position, that position of authority, and use it to groom younger officers, sometimes junior officers, and most often but not always female officers. So people who are abusing that position of trust which they've been given. And it's one of the reasons why the emphasis in this report on fair, objective promotion processes is so critical. We need to make sure we're picking people with the right potential, the right talent, and we need to give all of our colleagues confidence that that's being done fairly.
Now, an independent review has discovered common themes within the police, which include cronyism, nepotism, corruption and abuse of position for sexual purposes. Those are some of the extraordinary findings from the Police Leadership Commission published today and co-chaired by the former Labour Home Secretary Lord Blunkett, who of course spoke to John Pienaar earlier, and the former Conservative Justice Minister Lord Herbert, who was on with breakfast today, actually. The College of Policing began the commission in October to identify challenges to help future-proof the service. Since 2018, the police watchdog has begun over 130 investigations into senior members of the police. Well, joining me now is the other co-author of the report, Deputy Met Police Commissioner Matt Jukes, who joins us tonight. Matt, good evening to you.
Good evening, Kate.
Do you find this pretty embarrassing reading? Cronyism, nepotism, corruption, the abuse of position by senior police leaders for sexual purposes. This feels like it should belong in a different era, doesn't it?
There are some really uncomfortable messages throughout this report, some messages about the way we have led the service, but also a central message which is about the remarkable men and women who are leading brilliantly in the service despite several features. And that includes a postcode lottery in terms of how people are selected and promoted, a real concern about us being drawn increasingly into culture wars, and a pattern of underinvestment. But I shouldn't steer off the difficult points that you go to in your introduction, Kate. There are really damaging moments for policing. We know that across all levels of our forces, but when leaders behave badly, it has a particularly impactive effect. And of course, I say that's in the backdrop of many, many men and women performing that task incredibly, but they deserve better support than they've had from governments, from the service as a whole. And we are really pointing some strong recommendations in this report.
I'm going to go to perhaps the most shocking of these revelations first of all, Matt, and I'll just ask you to be as open as you can on this. The abuse of position by police leadership for sexual purposes. What are we talking about there?
So what we've seen this in the Met, sadly. I've seen it in other forces. We've seen individuals who take that hierarchical position, that position of authority, and use it to groom younger officers, sometimes junior officers, and most often but not always female officers. So people who are abusing that position of trust which they've been given. And it's one of the reasons why the emphasis in this report on fair, objective promotion processes is so critical. We need to make sure we're picking people with the right potential, the right talent, and we need to give all of our colleagues confidence that that's being done fairly. So
to sum it up, young female officers are being told by senior leadership that they will be put in an advantageous position, or it might be advantageous for them to start a sexual relationship or have some sort of offer a sexual favour to a senior member of the police in order to fast track their promotion. And they might be offered that as an opportunity to excel their career.
I think often it's the reversal of that power dynamic, which is, the most concerning element. It's the male officer taking advantage clearly of that situation. It's what you're alluding to there. And sometimes it's not really necessarily for promotion. It can just be the exploitation of moments when people are vulnerable in other ways, and power creates a distorted dynamic. And, in the Met, we're seeing 3 times as many colleagues stand up and whistleblow, call out these behaviours, these wrongdoings when they see them, these and others. And we've exited 3 times as many people from the organisation as we typically had in previous years. So policing is applying itself to these questions, but the report that we've published today focuses on a whole range of interventions which can give the public and colleagues confidence that the very best in policing, and we've got amazing people leading in policing, can outshine and disrupt those people who have impacted trust and confidence.
The likelihood is, I mean, I've got here the data from the report that since 2018, the police watchdogs began 78 investigations relating to chief officers. 47 have involved chief constables. Is the likelihood that those figures are in actuality going to be much higher, because a lot of these incidents just won't have been reported, Matt, because of the sensitive nature of it all?
So there's a wide range of investigations reflected in those behaviours that have been reported, and the thresholds for starting investigations are justifiably very low. But we have seen cases proven, and we know that misconduct is underreported, and any instances of misogynistic and violent behaviour, violence against women and girls in wider society are often underreported. So we're paying real attention to these questions within the service, and we really want to turbocharge the very best of leadership with a really strong, fast stream that picks up talent within our organisation, women and men who can come through and change the character of the service. And many of us, and I hope I'd be included amongst this, have really tried hard on these issues across the years, and we've done that despite leadership development in policing being chronically underinvested compared to other sectors like the military. So some very uncomfortable messages, some things for us and government to reflect on. But there is in all of this a clear signal that policing, and you're asking these questions, Kate, because policing is important to our lives in Britain. It's important to victims of domestic abuse, the victims of crime in our neighbourhoods every day, and it's important in general to our sense of well-being. So the way that's led shouldn't be a postcode lottery, should be more consistent. It's
also paid for by the taxpayer, so it's in all of our interest to make sure that there's transparency there. And in this report, I absolutely welcome that. Those leadership those officers in leadership, Matt, who have abused their position, whether it's for sexual favours, whether they have recruited in their own image, whether it's been cronyism, whether there's been corruption there at all. How would you describe them? Let's just be really honest about this. There presumably is no place in the police force for people who operate in this way. How would you describe them simply?
Yeah, those individuals have got no future in policing. You know, we expect people to go out on the streets and show enormous physical courage and moral courage. They deserve to be well led. And again, you know, I should stress there are many people delivering that leadership, whatever level in the organisation they're doing that. We need to know that we are all role models in the way that we conduct ourselves. And in order to test that really rigorously, we need to take this out of the hands of inconsistent local processes that, as you've pointed to, are vulnerable at least to the allegation of favouritism or nepotism, to inconsistency. We need to see people moving within the service and around the service, within forces and across the country, to make sure we've got great, curious, disruptive leadership in different places. And we see that, and we see it making a real difference for communities. But it is still too much of a lottery in terms of whether you, as a talented individual, are going to get picked up, identified, and you will be worrying at that time whether somebody else is being favoured.
Yeah, gosh, you would, I mean, you would just hope, and it should be the case, that if you are talented and you're a bright prospect, that there should be a path for you. And that's clearly not always been the case, as your report highlights. Going forward, you've got this new leadership fast stream. It's the largest talent scheme ever introduced into policing. At least 400 people should be recruited onto the scheme each year. So you've sort of set that target there. And one of the issues that we've mentioned is senior leaders picking people in their own image. So to that point, will this new leadership fast stream have particular quotas or soft quotas, that a certain percentage of that intake, that 400 people intake each year, must be female or must be from a particular ethnic background? How are you going to ensure that they're not just, again, people picking people in their own image?
The service is always going to recruit, select and promote in the end on merit. It's an enormously important principle. And if it's ever been compromised in the ways that we found some certainly concern about and some evidence of, if it's ever been compromised, then that is very damaging.
And can someone maybe make their own referral to that? I'm just because... presumably, in order to get into the leadership fast stream, you have to be recommended by a senior leader. In order to make this equal across the board, can people nominate themselves for this scheme?
Well, what we're aiming for, and these systems will be designed further in the implementation of the review's recommendations, is a system which is open for people who are outside policing to come in. So absolutely nominate themselves and bring that breadth of perspective and diversity of background into the organisations, but also to pick up people in service. And to your point, we intend the selection for these kind of systems to be national, to be nationally moderated, to be a long way away from individual decision makers, so those kind of blocks and barriers don't place. But it is important to say we've seen real progress in terms of gender in the force. We've seen better representation, not yet the 50-50 we'd aspire to at chief officer level and in other ranks, but our progress in relation to race is much less. And we, of course, are going to pay attention to and make sure there are specific considerations to being a service which is capable of being trusted and by its communities and representing them, but in the end, making sure we select people based on their merit.
Yeah. But making sure that there is a representation there, presumably, of people from different ethnic backgrounds, as well as different gender, maybe even people of different across all equality measures, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we've I policed several places across the UK and currently policing in London. We're a global city, people drawn from all over the world, all sorts of heritages. And people with different identities, living within the UK, many generations into that journey. And that richness is in our city. And in order to understand that city, we have to reflect that in the service. And we've got to be, there's a business case for that. Many business reviews will tell you more diverse organisations perform better. There is a business case for that kind of intervention to make sure we are bringing in diverse perspectives, diverse experiences, and representing our communities. And that's not new. That's something which
But it's just making sure that those are in leadership positions, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what we need to do with the fast streaming here, really, is make sure we don't wait a generation. So, it has taken me 31 years in policing now, 30 years to reach my current level. We can't wait a whole generation for the change in perspective that those brilliant people who are joining the service now are bringing. At the same time as recognising there are great people within our organisations now who we want to lift up and move through at pace. And so one of the examples of something we want to do is introduce a rank of senior constable to basically value those people who don't progress to be chief officers, superintendents, senior leaders, but people who are showing real leadership at the front line. And so they are a big influence on our teams.
Yeah.
And we want to follow that.
Matt, it's been great to speak to you. Thank you for answering those questions honestly. The Police Federation today describing this review as a watershed moment for policing. Matt Jukes is Deputy Met Police Commissioner. Great to speak to you, Matt. Thank you.